I feel like, at least when I've seen mock-wise, like those two have been the top two. And
To me, he just reminds me a lot of Jonathan Taylor coming out of college. Very similar. Also, Saquon Barkley.
But now we go to this year's draft, 2022. Start at 3. I'll throw it to you first, John, because I got to pull up my notes here in a sec. So who do you have as your number 3 running back? And we're only doing 3 again for the 2022 NFL draft class.
Yeah, I'll start with 2 things before I give my pick. Number 1, and I say this every year on draft time, don't draft running back in the first round. I still hold true to that, despite, who I have at number 1.
Your guy Javonte wasn't drafted in the first round.
Exactly.
Najee and Etienne were drafted in the first round. Etienne had injury, but still. And then even Michael Carter drafted later.
Michael Carter was a 4th round pick. And I mean, at least when Mike White was out there, he was getting like 10 catches a game and he was racking up fantasy stats for me. So he has potential to be great too. Don't draft running back in the first round because, as always, and this class is no different, there is probably like 15 guys who can be impact players, not necessarily starters, but can come in and be impact players. And most of those you can get on the back end of day 2 or the front end of day 3 in like that 3rd, 4th, 5th round range. You can get a lot of guys. I mean, look at a lot of NFL running backs, even your Packers, Aaron Jones, a 4th round pick, AJ Dillon, a 2nd round pick. You don't have to draft a running back in the first round to get a successful one. A lot of very good ones are not. Alvin Kamara is another one. He was, I think, a 4th round pick as well. Anyway, my number 3 pick in this year's draft class is James Cook out of Georgia. Georgia actually had a pretty loaded running back room, and they have 2 running backs coming out this year. I can't remember the name of the other guy off the top of my head. I'm blanking on it. But anyway, James Cook, he is my number 3 option. Now, in college, in that backfield, he actually wasn't the one who was getting the lion's share of the workload. And so one positive that I see in his career is that he doesn't have like a lot of damage to him yet, like some of the other guys that we're going to talk about later do. So he's pretty fresh. We know at the running back position, very limited amount of time that they're really going to be in their like physical prime. And so for James Cook, he doesn't have that problem. But I really love his acceleration and his agility. I think those are 2 of the keys to his game. Really quick cuts, able to, find the hole, take that run, all the way to the house. I think he had like a 4.4 flat for his 40 time. So, not like the fastest in the class, but his acceleration and his quick feet, I think really just set him apart from a lot of the running backs to me. He can get involved in the receiving game. I think he can be an impact player on special teams in his early years as well. But I think that in sort of the way the modern NFL is going to where you're going to need multiple running backs, he is that change of pace guy that you want, that you can pair with a sort of bruiser, alongside him. And I think that he could be a really high impact player that can play on 3rd down, which is really important as well. So James Cook is my number 3. What about you?
All right, so my number 3, not going to be James Cook. I'm actually going with Mr. Jerome Ford from Cincinnati. Previously, actually initially committed to Alabama, transferred. So obviously has some talent. Nick Saban wanted to bring him in. But yeah, solid build, runs with good power. But I think the thing I like about most is he knows how to set up blocks. And not only that, when he sees the hole, he has that ability. I think you mentioned kind of like you like about Cook, where he can put his foot in the ground and go 100 miles per hour through that hole. I'm not saying he's Raheem Mostert, but kind of like those one-cut Raheem Mostert type guys where they can hit that hole at 100 miles per hour and make the most of that. Yeah, definitely has that home run-ish ability, but and also some solid agility. Only concerns mainly are his agility is just solid. Like he's not like an amazing, stop-start kind of guy, or make a bunch of guys miss. And he has solid power, at least in college. So I'm not sure. Once again, when we're talking about translating to the NFL, he may have lesser than. So he may be more of a 3rd down change of pace type guy. And also didn't get to see a lot in the pass game in college. And once again, that's tough for a lot of running backs because college is really simplified too. But when he did, never really got to see that much. And then once also may not be his fault, not great in pass pro. He had a few moments, where he wasn't so on the ball on certain concepts or reading things. But once again, that could probably be teached out in the NFL, hopefully. So yeah, he's my third guy. Like you mentioned, would not draft him in the first round. He's probably going to be third, fourth, day three type guy. But I think he can definitely be, if you have a Derrick Henry or at least a lead back already in place, he could be a good change of pace kind of guy. Maybe the Panthers grab him because Chuba Hubbard wasn't so great last year. Or maybe the Chiefs are just throwing to her, even the Niners, maybe. Who knows? So we'll see with him. But he is my number 3 back in the draft class. We are going to do Snake. So let me go to my number 2 man, and that is Mr. Kenneth Walker III out of Michigan State. Yes, Kenneth Walker runs with good power, obviously, has really good burst. I'm not sure if he does have home run speed. Only question I also have with him, I think he's obviously a little bit better than Jerome Ford in terms of making guys miss in tight spaces. And also, I think he has better power. Hence, he can have the ability to run over, maybe run over, break a tackle, break an arm tackle if he really doesn't need to. Really good feel for setting up blocks and just, maybe if the defense overcommits, I can stop and maybe, and kind of just take it back the other way. So really good at that. Mainly just a north-south kind of guy. He has solid hands, but this is where we once again didn't really get to see him much in the pass game. And then also in pass pro, he was not great either in pass protection. So definitely need to work on that technique and also just knowing and reading defenses as well. And then obviously mileage might be a concern for some teams because he was the lead back at Michigan State. Had 264 carries last year, so we'll see what he can do. But nonetheless, love him. Very tough runner and guy, so I think he can be definitely a good second-ish. I wouldn't be surprised if he sneaks in the first round somehow, but like we mentioned, probably best to take running backs not in the first round. So I have him at like a second round grade. But what about you, John? Who do you have for numero 2?
Yeah, my number 2, also Kenneth Walker. You covered a lot of it. Just to run through some of his, measurables real quick, because it'll sort of set up a comparison I have. 5'9", 211 for the weight. His 40-yard dash, 4.38. Vertical jump, 34 inches. Broad jump, 122 inches. So, I mean, I wouldn't say that he's like a crazy explosive athlete, but that's a really great 40 time for running back, 4.38. That's really solid. The height is, it's not a super big concern at running back, but he is one of the sort of smaller guys. But I think that he plays above his build. I think that he's one of those guys who's not afraid to put his shoulder down. And I was actually literally just thinking of this when you were saying he's sort of a north-south guy. And this is a comparison that I think you made to one of the running backs in the previous years. He reminds me a lot of Cam Akers. I think that they're pretty similar running backs coming out of college. Sort of that smaller build, but not afraid to be physical with people. And they have that speed, that ability to, take it to the house if they need to. But they're not necessarily they don't really fit in either of those categories of like power back or speed back, but they can kind of do both. So
they just kind of run hard. I don't know how to explain it, but they're just hard. You can tell they are running their hair's on fire, even though they're not the fastest guys. Sometimes.
Yeah, and you can tell that with Kenneth Walker. I mean, he had the second most rushing yards in the entire nation last year in college football. He was, he won a multitude of awards. I think he was a Heisman finalist as well. So, I mean, Kenneth Walker was very accomplished last year at Michigan State. It did take him a little bit to burst onto the scene. His first couple of years, he had about 500, 600 rushing yards each. But then when he transfers to Michigan State, that's when he has his big breakout years. So Kenneth Walker is my number 2. Like I said, I don't view any running back really as a first-round pick, but that's no shot at him. It's really just the value of the position, the depth of the position. I think that he can be a really solid starting running back for any team that drafts him and can be an instant impact player because, we saw what he's able to do at college, and I think that can really translate well to the league. But my number 1 option, and I wouldn't say it's biased, but I'm just way more informed on him because I've been able to watch him since his freshman year, because I'm a Baylor fan, Baylor alum. I've watched a lot of Big 12. I've been able to see him in person as well, but it's Breece Hall from Iowa State. To me, he just reminds me a lot of Jonathan Taylor coming out of college. very similar. Also, Saquon Barkley, not necessarily as much of Saquon Barkley because Saquon was way more of like a physical freak than those guys. But Brees Hall, I mean, his measurements really jump off the charts. The thing that really stands out to me, which for explanation, he runs a 4.39 40. I think he had a 126-inch broad jump, but the thing that really pops to me is he had a 40-inch vertical, led the entire class, and I feel like when you just have that sort of explosiveness in your legs, to be able to jump that sort of that high at a vertical as a running back, I think that shows the explosiveness that you can have out of your runs. Compared to Kenneth Walker, I think he's a little bit more patient. Is able to wait and hit the holes a little bit more. Really understands every single run concept. I don't think he's as like twitchy as Kenneth Walker is, but I think they both have that high end speed, really great agility. Both have power. But yeah, like I said, the differentiator between them to me is I think that Brees Hall is just a little bit more explosive in his athleticism, his vertical, his 40 time, all those kind of things. They're similar to Kenneth Walker, but the explosive and the broad jump are just that much better. Along with his height, he is 6 feet tall. He weighs 217, so he's a little bit taller, a little bit heavier. That I think that he's a little bit more built for the NFL, and like I said, reminds me a lot of Jonathan Taylor. So Brees Hall, he is my number one running back. Who do you have?
Yeah. Kind of like last year, I have Brees Hall as well as my number one running back. You mentioned all your points valid. You mentioned the explosiveness, which does you see a little bit more with him being more explosive than Kenneth Walker on film. Also, more nuance in the pass game, and that may be a beneficiary of playing in the Big 12, where it's a lot more passing, and also just pass blocking a little bit better in terms of reading all that different blitzers and knowing who to pick up. Only other concern I want to throw in there too is he did have a lot of touches as well. And then also want to throw in, I know Baylor may not be in this conversation, but most Big 12 defenses just haven't been great. They do play a lot of pass. It's a passing kind of conference, and so
they're much more built to stop the pass than the run.
And even then, it's not that great.
Yeah.
Most of those schools. So, but nonetheless, you can only evaluate what you can. You can only play the person in front of you. So we'll see if that can translate. But I believe it can, obviously, since I have him over Kenneth Walker, and so does John. So, yeah, nothing much else to add. John really hit it all there with Brees Hall. But once again, probably a second round, at least I feel, I'm pretty sure John agrees, second round type guy. And, maybe he might not go first. Maybe a team feels better with Walker as a more inside the tackles kind of guy or something of the sort, or, it happens, but it doesn't necessarily mean one guy's going to be better, as we've seen countless years. So we'll see where they fall in the draft. But yeah, those, anything else you want to add, or?
I did want to hit on, because I did forget to say this about Kenneth Walker. The biggest concern for me and why he's at number 2 is, like you said, the passing game stuff. Very limited work in the passing game, so we don't really know the kind of route tree he has. And in the modern day NFL, if you're not very good in the passing game, that limits the impact you can have. You got to come out on third downs, which can make the play calls a little more predictable for the other defense to really see what you're doing, because you don't have your best running back out there. So that part does concern me about Kenneth Walker. But other than that, I think great running back, and it could be something that we just haven't seen. Maybe he's good at it, but the scheme just didn't really allow for it to happen.
Or maybe he just wasn't taught everything. I mean,
right.
I hate to bring his name up, but Deshaun Watson mentioned a year or so in the league, like, Clemson didn't teach me how to deal with these certain blitzes in college. Most of the time, the coach is like, let me worry about that. You just get to play to the team. Or I suppose the NFL, where they say, no, like, if you see something, you fix it. So, or you react to it. So
right.
Maybe it's something that could be coached, and we could be here next year saying he's the best one of the 3. Who knows? But yeah, those are the running back rankings for the 2022 draft class from John and myself. Interesting to see how the people feel. But I feel like, at least when I've seen mock wise, like, those 2 have been the top 2, and then the third's like, who knows? I don't think there's even a third, because I've only seen like them in like 2-round mock drafts. Once again, I think everyone kind of following the trend that maybe only one of these guys gets taken in the first round. If that, probably not. So we'll see how that falls.